two things. One is like so we got to define what brain neuroplasticity is. For a long time, people thought when you had experiences, they built up in your body and they locked and they became fixed. So there was this debate for many thousands of years about how fixed people were, but generally people used to think you were pretty fixed. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can only learn a language when you're a kid, all this stuff. That's all wrong. That's all. It's actually like none of that's true. There definitely are advantages to learning things when you're young, but not nearly to the degree that people think. And if you want to learn more about that, you can find, there's like, I forget what the title of it is. It might be This Is Your Brain on Music. There was a professor who was in their like 50s or 60s who had never played an instrument. And they took a year off, a sabbatical from university, to try and learn how to play guitar to see if they could make their brain plastic and to learn this new thing. And then they compared that to the research they did in their lab with other people learning skills across different age groups. And lo and behold, everyone has about the same level of neuroplasticity. Some people are more than others, but it has general amounts of variance amongst the population. There are, especially for things like language acquisition, there are what we call critical window periods where for youth, like for babies, if you're exposed to different sounds, the smallest units of language are called morphemes and phonemes. Your brain will take in all those data points and pull out meaning based on the syntax and the semantics and the grammar. So that is to say that there are periods of time where certain kinds of learning are more possible, but I think the general folk understanding of this is completely wrong. You can definitely introduce neuroplasticity or change yourself really substantially all throughout your life. So I hope for all you hearing this, that if you have any set ideas of, oh, well, I'm too far along, I can't learn how to be a photographer, I can't become a painter, I can't learn a new language, I'm already in my 40s. Like, like, sorry, the excuse is no longer valid. Unless you want it to be, then use it all you want. So how do psychedelics interplay with neuroplasticity? Well, really simply, psychedelics are commonly prompts of, like, ingesting a psychedelic prompts a ton of stress. And there's a bunch of neurotransmitters and stuff but I'm just going to say stress. And stress, one of the things it does is signal to your body, like in this moment, just think about, like, if you saw someone with a gun over there, can you imagine that stress that you would feel? And what would immediately happen after that trigger or that, yeah, what do you think you might do?
It's fight or flight.
Yeah. So you'd like come online and you'd be primed for action.
Yeah.
So stress is a really great way of being like, pay attention. You need to do something. Stress actually signals to our brain and to our body, because, by the way, we have neurons in our body, like in our heart and in our stomach. And it signals, hey, like, yo, be alert. You're going to have to do something right now. And so in that place of activation is the potential to either default to the patterns that are known. And so maybe that's, oh shit, there's a threat of violence, I'm going to run away or I'm going to go fight them. But also there's, like, anything you do in those states will be more flexible and have more energy behind them and be more likely to be remembered, especially actions, physical actions, because there's stress going on. So that's a gross oversimplification. That's just any stress will make you like come on alert. And it just so happens that psychedelics do that. But the magic of psychedelics, and the reason why something like psilocybin is going to be more therapeutic or psychospiritually like enriching than something like having someone point a gun at you, is that there's a bunch of different like chemical constituent elements that reroute brain activity in such a way that your brain is forced to re-examine fixed beliefs or patterns of relating or thinking. So the way I like to think about this is, if we have all these different parts of our brain that are more or less specialized, and they each like to do things in certain ways. And generally, as you go through life, your brain's doing a really good job of figuring out, how can I throw this baseball or write this article or make food in a way that accomplishes my goals reliably, avoids danger, and then also isn't super inefficient. And once it figures some of those patterns out, especially as you're getting older, it's like, okay, bank that recipe, save that neural pattern of activity, because it works. We don't need to reinvent it, like learn it. And so when somebody consumes something like psilocybin, magic mushrooms, there gets to be these like roadblocks put in on the highways of their brain. And it's not like the brain shuts off so much as it's just like, oh, you can no longer go straight from A to B. You're being rerouted. And in that process, the brain's like, oh, okay, that's no biggie. That happens all the time. This is a little bit more than usual, but we can do it. And so it figures out an alternate route. This is actually commonly what we can attribute to this hallucinations, or the sensory, like the thing that most people are familiar with about psychedelics or hallucinogens, is because it's not, say, just for your vision. It's not just going from point A to point B. It goes a different way. And those suburbs that it goes through, like driving somewhere, a different route to get to work, those suburbs are like slightly different. So the main message might get through, you might still be able to see, but there's going to be all this extra information that filters in and affects your personal experience. And it's like, oh, I thought I was just going to see the same highway that I'm familiar with, but there's all this like weird color stuff going on. And so synesthesia is the phenomenon of sensory inputs being overlapped. And so synesthesia is where you taste a color or you smell a sound. By the way, there are actually a number of people who are born this way, and just have this all the time to various degrees. And it's a wild area to research if you're keen. I have a really good friend who's a very talented jazz musician, and he sees every note he plays. He sees color like float through the sky, and he's never done psychedelics, partly because he's like, I already see so much, man. So for neuroplasticity and this ability to be not the fixed rigid wall, but the moldable clay, part of it's because there's all this novelty, and you've made things change already. You've rerouted the traffic. And so it's like, oh, I always thought from A to B, I could just take this main highway. But it turns out when I go through this suburb, there's so many beautiful things to see. And in that way, you can start to explore new patterns of neural activity, or new choices or behaviors or physical motions. Maybe you're like, I was only breathing in my throat. What if I breathe into my belly? Whoa. Okay. Whoa, I'm going to try and remember this later.
Hey, welcome to Today Dreamer, a podcast and YouTube channel where we explore the interplay between inner and outer work, and we look at what cultivating the practice of presence within our lives feels and looks like once we clear the mind and open the heart. So this is just a short clip from a full podcast episode, which I'll leave a link to around here somewhere. And if you'd like to check out the whole catalogue of episodes along with guided meditations and what I have on offer, please head over to todaydreamer.com and have a peek. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and click the little notification bell so you don't miss any of the good stuff to come.